Let's get scratching.
And hello again, everyone. My name is Adam, and welcome to another episode of my podcast, the KashCast, where we interview creatives around and beyond the animation industry about their work, passions, and hobbies. With me, I have not only a guest co-host, ArteiceTB, but acclaimed voice actor, writer, ADR director, Marissa Lenti. I'm really excited to have both of them on the show. Arteice, this is the first time you've been on the show, so feel free to introduce yourself first.
Okay, sup streaks, I'm Arteice. I normally do analyze media or just talk about whatever I want on my channel, ArteiceTB. I also am using my human Pokemon coordinator avatar for this to be more cordial. Because over there I talk about Pokemon and hyperfixate on that. But yeah, it's good to be here. Long time friend, first time visit.
And again, thank you so much for being on here. Now, Marissa, how about you? Would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Yeah, my name is Marissa Lenti. I am an anime voice actor, video game voice actor, voice director, production manager, VTuber. I wear a lot of hats. And I've been doing that, most of that going on about 10 years now.
Very impressive. Oh, wow.
Nice.
So for this episode, so what I normally do on this show, what I've been doing is I tend to intersperse viewer questions with my own. But since I obviously have my co-host, so I have questions that are more general concerning like your voice acting experience, and Arteice will probably have more questions specifically focusing on your work on Digital Circus. But of course, if anything else comes up, this is very casual. This is a very casual environment. We'll just play it by ear. So, going first, my first question is to just generally break down your roles of like the many hats you have, like writing, ADR production, voice acting, etc.
Sure. How do we approach it? I guess I'll kind of go in order. So I started my career as just a straight up voice actor. I started in like 2013, 2014. Mostly doing stuff from home, so like indie games and indie animation, stuff on Newgrounds. And then after I graduated college, I moved to Texas and I started working on anime. I did a bunch of stuff at Funimation when it was still Funimation.
Right.
A couple of my early roles were Attack on Titan, Fairy Tail, and One Piece. So it was a really great start as far as that's concerned.
Right.
A couple years into that, I got hired at a couple different studios to wear a couple different hats. So Sound Cadence Studios, which is owned by Amberly Connors, hired me to do directing. At the time, I was directing Death Battle for Screw Attack, later Rooster Teeth. And so that show kind of came with me to Sound Cadence. And then I started doing other stuff for Sound Cadence, like indie games and eventually anime. And at the same time, I got hired by Sentai Filmworks to start writing scripts for them, ADR scripts for anime. So I wrote a couple anime like Bloom Into You. And from there, I got hired by other anime companies to write their scripts as well. So I did eventually write scripts for Funimation, for Crunchyroll,
Right.
Discotek, all those guys. One of the main things I do at Sound Cadence, aside from production coordination, which is just overseeing productions, I do casting. I do full project management, where I am the director, I'm the casting person. Sometimes I'm even the script writer. I'm overseeing everything from start to finish. I do all the post-production overseeing. And then within like the last 2 years, I also became a VTuber. And so I will stream, games I've been in. I streamed Borderlands 3 when that came out, and I was one of the playable characters. We do a lot of Digital Circus themed stuff.
I've seen.
Now that is
I can imagine
happening. And if there's anything else, it is slipping away from me right now. But that's the bulk of what I do.
Insane. Well, first off, I actually did not know you're involved in Death Battle. I know I have a couple friends who are really big fans of that, so of course, thank you. But my follow-up question is just, does it get overwhelming having to balance so many hats?
It can. There are some points in the year where it's way too much. And there's, I've got a script due over here and I've got a show that I'm directing over there. And also I have to do my own voiceover. But then there are other parts of the year that will be very quiet. Right now, I am working on a couple projects as a voice actor, but I'm not directing anything. I'm not writing anything.
Right.
So I have a lot of free time to do stuff like this and to stream. So the nice thing about having so many different hats is that when it's slow, it's not too slow. There's usually at least one thing that's still happening. But yes, it can get very overwhelming if I don't balance it well enough.
Yeah, I can imagine time management definitely seems to be like a very key skill to have.
Yes.
So, just to have like a pretty even flip. Artiste, do you have any questions? Like, what would you like to open up with?
On the topic of your hats, it's a great segue, Adam, because I am curious of how did you secure your role as Gangle on the Amazing Digital Circus? Like, what was like the audition process looking like?
Mm-hmm. So, I got the audition sides direct from Glitch. I don't know how they found me. I assume someone recommended me.
Nice.
Shout outs to whoever that was. And it was all the female and non-binary characters from episode 1. So I had the options to audition for Pomni, Ragatha, Zooble, Gangle, and the Gloink Queen. And I ended up trying out for everyone except Pomni. Pomni, I figured as the lead, maybe needed someone with a more naturally high-pitched voice, because it looked like she was going to have sort of a cute, natural higher voice. And as someone who you can tell has a pretty low voice, when I'm forcing my voice higher, when I'm doing higher pitched characters, they come out a lot more cartoony than maybe a naturalistic higher voice. So I decided to skip on Pomni. And went for everybody else. So I did a Ragatha audition, I did a Zooble audition, I did a Gloink Queen audition, and I did Gangle. And Gangle's the one I got a call back for, where they redirected me and we changed a couple things, and then ultimately I did end up booking it, which was great because Gangle was my reach character. I figured I was a shoo-in for maybe Gloink Queen or Zooble, and then getting Gangle was a very nice surprise.
Nice. So with Gangle, like as a character, would you say you're accustomed to playing this more timid type of character?
Yes and no. I mean, it's not hard. I find that it comes quite naturally to me, but it is not the character archetype that most people hire me for. Mm-hmm. Most people are hiring me to be the big authoritative lady, because again, I have this lower voice. Or someone's mom. Very often I'm voicing someone's mom, or, the sexy femme fatale, or like a big authoritative buff lady. So while I find Gangle quite easy to play, most people who hear her are sort of taken aback because it is not really my normal archetype.
I can definitely co-sign to that, actually. There was a very funny conversation I had with my partner, where we're basically on two opposite ends of the spectrum, because I was excited about. I've kept up with your work, but I obviously was most excited about the Digimon Blu-ray.
Mm-hmm.
So I was gushing about that to my partner, who is a big Digital Circus, and then I'm looking at the credits and I saw that you voice both. So we naturally have a little bit of overlap over there.
Yeah, it's been fun to see people's reactions to they'll be like, oh, Gangle's voice. Like, let's look into her. Let's see what she's done. And they will be kind of, flabbergasted by some of my previous work in that it sounds nothing like Gangle.
Right.
And it's very delightful. I'm really grateful to Glitch for allowing me to step outside of my typical archetypes. Because it's just more fun that way.
Let's see. Oh, And I guess like my question regarding voice acting. So, as someone who has voice acted for many years, do you mind like describing if you had any difficulty, if any, transitioning like to a work from home schedule during the initial pandemic?
No, I didn't, but I was one of the lucky ones. So I made a home studio at the beginning of my career. As soon as I moved to Texas, I set up a home studio in my closet, and I was doing a lot of stuff from home way before the pandemic happened. Again, Death Battle I voiced from that closet. I games that I was in, like Honey Pop 2, I did from home. Newgrounds animations that I was in, I was doing all that stuff from home. So when it came time for everything to be done from home, it was really just like, okay, I'm in my closet way longer per day, but it was still the same for me. The only bizarre thing about the pandemic is that everybody kind of came up with their own home studio methods or recording methods. Right. So I was getting like care kits in the mail of like, here's the mic we want you to use, and can you set this up in your home studio? And so I had to figure out how to have like 2 or 3 different microphones, that I could swap out at any given time. And some of these setups ended up being quite big and took up a decent amount of space. But as time went on, eventually everyone sort of got on the same page, and I was just able to use my my same setup and computer that I had been using for years and years and years.
And that perfectly transitions to my next question, and I will obviously hand it over to Arteice afterwards, but like, what are some of the tools that you use on a regular, like, in terms of mic, software, equipment?
Sure. I mean, I record everything on Audacity. I know
Nice.
some people will use a fancier program than that, but I find it works perfectly fine for laying down basically anything you need to. So I've never seen a reason to upgrade. I have an iMac that I use in my booth simply because it doesn't have a tower. Obviously any computer that has a tower is going to have fans, and any computer that has fans is going to make noise.
Right.
So an iMac that's just basically a screen with all of the internal components inside its own monitor, for me, that's ideal.
Right.
Hooked up to it, I've got an Apollo Twin, which is a preamp that is very easy to control. It's got a big knob on the top of it, so it's very easy to turn the gain up and down. And then I use a Neumann TLM 103, which is kind of industry standard home studio microphone. Obviously the big boy, the big kahuna Neumanns are more of what you'll find in like a actual recording studio, but the littler ones, the 102 and the 103, if you have those, people are generally like, okay, that's industry standard home studio microphone. So that's what I've got in there.
Wow. Very, very impressive. Definitely a lot more complicated than me. I'm just rocking an AT2020 and a Focusrite, which, humble beginnings and all that.
That's how a lot of people start.
How about you, Arteice? Do you have any follow-up questions?
My follow-up with that is, we talked a lot about different kind of mics, and my head was just buzzing out. Does the mic difference really make all that much a difference?
It does. Every microphone is going to make you sound a little bit different, and every microphone is going to have its own applications. Like there's shotgun mics for when you're like on location. There's ribbon mics. Not really a lot of people use ribbon mics anymore, but they have a much warmer sound. And then obviously the difference between a USB mic and a phantom powered mic is like night and day. A USB mic is always going to sound worse because you are not getting high fidelity audio out of that. You're getting still audio, and you could still record decent stuff. And when I was early in my career, I actually had a USB microphone. It was a Shure KSM maybe. But I initially used the Shure brand of microphone because I liked how it made my voice sound. It really captured like the lower, more resonant parts of my voice. And I thought that I sounded really nice on those. And some people do choose a microphone based on how it makes them specifically sound. Nowadays, I only use the Shure for streaming, which is what I'm recording on right now. This is my stream setup.
Oh, nice.
And then I use the Neumann for my booth specifically because most studios that you're going to work with as a voice actor are going to mandate that you have some microphone that basically sounds the same as everybody else's, regardless of how it makes you sound. And because the Neumann is so industry standard, it's just safer to use.
Right.
Yep.
Very eye-opening. And, obviously, like, no, sorry, I probably sound like a big nerd about this stuff. No, I just know that at least I'm pretty sure, and feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but I think like you did contribute some information to the How to Be an Online Voice Actor video series. So that is definitely what helped me upgrade my gear, since I was, of course, using a USB mic to start with.
Yeah, a little bit. I remember doing. I think there was one video that I helped out a little bit with. But yeah, I did used to reference those myself when I was new.
Oh wow!
They've been around for a while.
Coming to my focus, I just, and again, sorry for being a big nerd. I literally have my Digimon Blu-ray like right beside my computer.
Please
as we
nerd
record
out
this.
all you like. Digimon is my favorite thing of all time. So I am also a big nerd for Digimon.
Great. So I just want to first ask, like, what was your general experience on working on this project?
Oh, it was fabulous. I love Digimon, and Digimon the movie is my like favorite piece of anime media of all time. So getting approached by Discotek to head up the project was a dream. Getting to work with these actors was a dream. Getting to see the movie as it was coming together was a dream. Getting to be the one who got to make all these decisions was a dream. Really, the only thing that was difficult was this was my first time doing a union production. So I did have to learn how to do all of that paperwork, and it was a lot at first. But I've said this several times in a bunch of different public forums, but if we couldn't have gotten the original cast back, I really wouldn't have wanted to do the project at all. And going union was necessary to getting people back. So as much as I could be like, oh yeah, all that paperwork was sort of a drag, to me it's sort of a footnote in what was otherwise a dream project.
Yeah, I definitely feel it was absolutely worth it,
Yeah.
and yeah, it's just like, and this actually does segue into my next question. It's a little bit of a doozy, but in general, I can say, like, compared to, like, even as late as like Digimon movie's original release date to now, one could say that anime localization has obviously changed since then. And Digimon's initial localization, while obviously not perfect, obviously has its charm. So would you say it was, like, what was your experience trying to find a balance between a more faithful translation while still keeping the charm of the original dub when working on this?
Yeah, because on the one hand, obviously, there's no point in doing a redub if it's going to be exactly the same as the original.
Right.
So that's just sort of makes it moot. But at the same time, and this is something I said to Mark over at Discotek as we were kind of early on in production, I was like, I don't want to make the boring version of Digimon the movie. And unfortunately, I do find that when it comes to modern localization, it can be easy to fall into the trap of, well, the fans expect it to be one-to-one, therefore we can't add any flavor, we can't add any color, we can't have characters say anything funny because, that's not faithful to what is in the rough translation. And what that usually creates is kind of boring English versions.
Yeah.
And no one wants to make the boring version of the show. So there's this balance to be struck between, okay, we still want to have the flavor of the original English dub. We still want it to be enjoyable to watch in English, but we just can't be saying the exact same things as back in the day. So the rule of thumb that we came up with was basically whatever the characters are saying in this redub version, they can be exactly the lines from the old dub, but only in instances where it basically means the same thing as what is being said in Japanese.
Right.
So to give you a good example, there's a lot in the first movie that is basically exactly the same as Digimon the movie. And that is because the first movie's localization, even back then, was pretty close to what is going on. There's a lot of, what's a good example? Mom's gonna kill us. Or no, I'm picking from the wrong movie. That's the other thing. Is there's 3 movies, and I'm just like,
Yeah.
stuff like you know, let's say when Koromon is fighting Miko the cat, Tai says, you know, that's it, he's out of here, like, I've had it, he's out of here. And that's basically what he's saying in Japanese. He's saying, like, we have to get rid of this thing.
Right.
You know, when he's talking about you know, he's running through the streets, he's calling for Kari, and he says, how hard could it be to find a dinosaur? I kept that line because what he's basically saying is, like, in the Japanese is, it shouldn't be this difficult to find something so big.
Yeah.
So I was like, that's basically the same meaning. It's just a cute, you know, little kid version of it. And I was like, we'll keep that. But then later when Big Agumon and Parrotmon are fighting, all the kids are kind of overlooking the fight. And it cuts to Joe. And in the original dub, he says, you know, Mimi, look outside your window. And then it cuts back to him and he goes, Izzy, did you see that? And neither of those are true to what's happening in the Japanese version. In the Japanese version, he's calling the cops.
What?
And it actually causes a bit of timeline screwery as well, because they're not supposed to all know each other at this point in the story. They are strangers who happen to all be living in the same apartment complex, and that brings them together and they become the Digidestined. It's fate, you know. So having him calling Mimi and Izzy actually kind of messes with the timeline a little bit. So in the redub, he's calling the police. And I think the lines are still pretty funny because I wrote new jokes for that scene where he says, hello, police, there's a giant bird. And then when it cuts back to him, he says, the dinosaur got taken down. It's under a huge pile of rubble. What do you mean you don't believe me? Hello? So that's kind of the same vibe as the old dub.
Yeah.
But it is more accurate to what he's doing in the Japanese version, which is calling the police. Similarly, there's other stuff like that where, you know, some lines even got moved around. So in our war game, there's a line, I believe it's Tentomon who says it in the original dub. He says, like, it doesn't know we're here on it. Let's sneak up on it quietly when they're attacking Karamon for the first time. That line got moved to Izzy because Izzy in the original is saying something a little more like that. So it's the same wording as the original dub, but it's been moved to a more appropriate character. The only time we sort of broke that rule is when we really wanted a cute homage. A good example would be, again, in the first movie, when Big Agumon almost gets hit by the truck. And there's the 2 truck drivers that say, did you see that? No, I was sleeping, but you were driving.
I love that moment.
Love that joke. But in the original Japanese, there is no dialogue during that. The truck just kind of beeps and sort of goes by. The reason why we decided to keep that is, number one, it's a crowd pleaser, right? Everyone loves that joke. And Mark was like, we should just keep it. But I personally liked it because those 2 truck drivers are voiced by the original dubbing directors and script writers of Digimon the movie.
Yo, nice.
Cool.
So to me, I was like, this is like a little calling card for Jeff Nimoy and Bob Buckles. And I was like, let's keep it in there as like, here's a little shout out to them, right? They are still an important part of this movie's legacy. So even though technically in this scene there's not supposed to be any dialogue, we're going to put this joke back in. Otherwise, though, the other thing that makes this redub more modern is that aside from that, there was no added dialogue.
Right.
So usually in older dubs, they would add dialogue wherever they wanted. If someone was off screen, they could add, you know, a line or a joke or something, or they would take characters who traditionally don't speak and they would add words to them. A good example being Big Agumon and Red Greymon. They don't talk in the original at all, or Parrotmon.
Yeah.
You mean when
it's
he
completely
said, like,
silent.
I'm sorry. So you mean when he, in the original line, we said, I'm Greymon now. That wasn't in the original?
Nope.
Oh my god, my world just
wow.
flipped up. Oh my god, I love that
In the
line.
original, Greymon just growls and Parrotmon just squawks. It's completely dialogueless. It's a very quiet, very introspective movie, which is why they have Bolero playing the entire time, this classical piece. It's a very different vibe.
Oh my gosh, you just flipped my world upside down.
I know. So those lines got taken away, and we sort of went by the modern dubbing standard of if there's silence in the Japanese, there's silence in the English.
Right.
When characters are speaking, it matches up to how long they're speaking in the Japanese. We don't go over, we don't go under. We kind of do exactly what the Japanese is doing, just, writing different lines. The only exception, again, trying to keep the flavor of the original dub, was our Red Greymon in the redub has, I think, 2 lines, and it's his attack callouts.
Right.
Because the lack of attack callouts felt very empty, because English speakers are used to the characters calling out their attacks. Mm-hmm. So in the Japanese, Big Agumon and Red Greymon don't say anything, and neither does Parrotmon. In the original dub, they speak, they go, my turn, and, I'm Greymon now. The middle of the road of that was just attack callouts. So we just have Sonic Destroyer, Pepper Flame, and Nova Flame, which are different for Big Agumon and Red Greymon as opposed to regular Greymon and Agumon, who have Pepper Breath and Nova Blast. They're both flame for the big versions for some reason, but that is in keeping with the original dub, So it's it's half and half. And every instance got its own consideration towards, do we want to take the line from the original? Does it work? Could we give one of these lines to another character who's saying something more similar to what's being said in the Japanese version? And each movie gets more and more original as you go. The first movie is very much, it was already a pretty straight localization. Mm-hmm. So the first movie uses a lot of lines from the original dub. Our War Game, the second movie, is kind of half and half. A lot of stuff is from the original dub, but there's also a lot of new stuff. And then Hurricane Touchdown, the third movie, is basically a whole new script, because almost nothing of that original dub fits the context of what's actually going on in the movie.
Yeah.
So you kind of get to see 3 very different approaches to the exact same school of thought.
Right. Mm-hmm. And regarding the original movie, now this is just a rumor that I initially heard. So of course, if any of this sounds inaccurate, please feel free to dispel immediately. But from what I remember is that, because I was looking at like old trailers to Digimon movie too, and like the Our War Game segment was like the highlight of like all these promos and some slightly different lines and all that. So if I remember correctly, I think like the original plan was just to like have that as the centerpiece, and then maybe like Hurricane Touchdown would be like dubbed as like a standalone TV movie because to promote 02. But of course, adding on the runtime was a requirement for the theatrical release, and that's how we got what we got. And Kokomon dancing to Smash Mouth at the end of it.
Worth it.
Does that sound accurate? Because again,
yes.
Please feel free.
I believe that the original plan, at least if Jeff Nimoy's blog is completely accurate to his memory, which I would guess that it is, the original intent was for it to be the first 2 movies stitched together. So Digimon Adventure 1999 and Our War Game. So it would just be like the little 20-minute OVA, and then it would flash forward to Our War Game, and then that would be the whole movie. I don't know if it was specifically a runtime issue, because you've basically got, like maybe like an hour 15 if you do that. Yeah. But there was a studio mandate for the third movie to be included somehow.
Oh.
So I don't know if it was specifically a runtime issue, but it was mandated that the third movie be utilized in some way, probably to promote O2, because O2, I believe, was airing at the time that the movie hit theaters. If my timeline is correct, I believe the movie came out right before Raidramon was introduced in O2's American airing. So it was still early in O2, but O2 was airing. And so to leave out the O2 characters would be to leave out a promotion opportunity to direct people towards, hey, if you like season 1, season 2's on TV right now. You should go check it out.
Right.
So that was probably the school of thought.
Yeah, and see, thank you, honestly, because this is like a half truth that's like been in the back of my head for years. So of course, thank you so much. But no, like that obviously makes a lot of sense, and I'm just glad that now we're in a sphere where a lot of misconceptions from like the olden days, well, not old days, but you know what I mean,
Yeah,
of anime localization are finally being aired out.
The thing that I always, keep in the back of my brain whenever I'm looking at any old, dub or localization, I'm like, they must have had a reason. Everything probably had a reason. Runtime is a good guess. So I don't fault people for thinking that's the reason. But like similarly, Ghost Stories is that sort of anime chestnut of the typical story that gets told is actually kind of misinformation. It's sort of this telephone game that has gone on forever and ever and ever. The lore is that it did poorly in Japan, but that's actually not true. It did fine in Japan for what it was and for the block that it aired on. But it just, somehow made it into this, warped English version that is now quite legendary. So the misinformation and the lore that surrounds the dub sort of overrides the truth of the matter. And that's just the nature of humanity. We love to play telephone and be like, I heard this thing. And then it sort of gets, distorted as it goes along. But yeah, I also really appreciate that we're in sort of this world where via podcasts or via YouTube videos. There's a great channel called The Cartoon Cipher that I have helped do fact checking on many, many times.
Yes.
You can sort of dispel those rumors. Yeah.
Yeah, I was listening to, let's see. Yeah, it was a video talking about your experience on the Kimono Friends dub. I found it really fascinating, actually. And yeah, like, for Digimon specifically, I'm glad we are in a sphere where I definitely feel like there's like a better respect for both, not only like the original dub and like the circumstance it was made in, while necessitating the importance of having the original Japanese version. Because like, at least when you're in my shoes, like the more friends you get outside of America, the more you realize experiences, maybe even watching the exact same show, could be vastly different. Matter of fact, the artist and sometimes co-editor of this podcast, my partner Jay, will always verbally beat me over the head about how they grew up with Butterfly instead of Z-Rap. But it's all fun here. I will finally push it over to your Arteice, so she can ask a question. I've been on my soapbox long enough.
That was good. I liked going down memory lane with Digimon because despite me being a long time Pokemon fan, I did watch Digimon up to like Data Squad. Gosh, I loved Tamers. That was so much fun. And Frontier, when they turned into Digimon, for some reason people didn't like that. I thought it was pretty cool, but later, it's getting its love. Gosh, that was so fun. But yeah, so my next question for you, Marissa, would be about when Gangle finally got to be on the spotlight for episode 4, while she was been playing support for the past 3 episodes and getting bullied by Jax. How did it feel like being the spotlight character?
I mean, obviously I was really hype about it. When we were initially recording Digital Circus, we did the first 4 episodes before the pilot even came out.
Wow.
So I had no sense of how long it was going to take for people to see episode 4. And I also had no sense of what the show was even going to be like. So by the time the pilot came out and it blew up in popularity, and I also got to see how good it was, we were already long past recording episode 4. So I had this simultaneous, like, excitement of, oh my God, I can't wait for people to see my episode. Frustration of, oh my God, nobody really knows what Gangle's about yet. They haven't even seen episode 4. People would be like, she barely has any lines in the first 3 episodes. And I'm like, just wait. Oh, just wait. My girl gets her spotlight. And then also, I was beating myself up a little bit because Glitch does this great thing where they send you all of your lines after they've selected the ones that are going to go into the episode so that you can hear what was selected. And I was just sort of throwing those out because, I was like, okay, that's interesting. Anyway, next thing I'm working on today. But as soon as Digital Circus got big, I really wanted to re-listen to all of my episode 4 Gangle stuff, and I didn't have it anymore. And I was so very sad. So the first one that I have, the first comp that I have is actually from episode 5, which is cool. And I do re-listen to it quite a bit. But I didn't have anything from 4. So the entire time leading up to 4 being released, I was just like, I really hope I did a good job. I don't even remember. I don't remember what I said. I don't remember anything. And then when we got to see it, we were actually at a convention. Anime Weekend Atlanta, AWA, hosted us.
Nice.
And gave us a big stage and a big screen to watch episode 4 premiere on. And that was the coolest. Just the coolest.
You saw everyone's reactions, and from then, it's like, wow, Gangle is now my favorite character.
It's awesome. I was so delighted because literally I went back to my autograph table right after the episode, and people just came up to me and started talking to me about it. And I was like, this is immediate, immediate reaction, immediate discussion, immediate fan interaction. It was awesome.
Oh, that's so cool, because I know, like that line, you got time to lean, you got time to clean. Oh my, that hurt. God, it hurt so many of us.
Oh man, I was actually gonna ask. We did get a viewer question from a friend of the show, Vinrako Genjako. That specific line, it didn't come from personal experience, did it?
I did work in retail, but my manager was pretty cool.
I
worked at GameStop. And my manager basically was like, there was no, if you got time to lean, you got time to clean. But she would say like, hey, keep yourself busy. Don't just stand behind the cash wrap and be on your phone. But what I would do is I would go in the back and start sorting the Skylanders. And I was allowed to do that. And that was awesome because I didn't have to talk to anybody and I knew a lot about Skylanders. So I was just putting them in their little baggies and marking which games they worked on and putting them back out on the floor. And I would organize the display. I loved reorganizing displays. I was doing that constantly. If there was no one in the store, I was reorganizing some display, usually the Skylanders, but sometimes something else. The amiibos, I loved reorganizing the amiibos, making them look pretty. So no, my manager never told me if you have time to lean, you have time to clean. But she did tell me like, hey, you can't just stand behind the register on your phone. So find something to do. And she'd let me do whatever I wanted. So I did a lot of reorganizing and I did a lot of sorting. I love sorting things. And I did a lot of like going in the back and finding old product and finding a place in the store for it. I'd find like, oh man, this like wheel attachment for like a racing game that never sold. I'm going to go and like reprice it and find somewhere out on the floor to put it so that we can hopefully get rid of it. I loved doing stuff like that. So it was my retail experience was actually a lot better than it seems most people's were. And I never worked in food service.
Right.
I feel that. I worked in retail myself. My managers weren't all too bad. It was just a lot of like physical labor. But I worked at kind of a spa for a while. But I liked like organizing like the towels and such and helping the masseuses and whatnot to getting their rooms prepared. But sometimes you get the nicest people, other times you don't get some nice people. When I was bald for a period of time because I shaved my head during 2020, just to have a sense of control again. And when I came back to work, one of the nice older ladies asked me if I was feeling okay, which I think that she thought I had cancer.
Right.
Yeah. So it's kind of crazy interactions you kind of get.
Okay, let's see. Oh, and well, I don't want to like have like a a whiplash in terms of topics. Artiste, if you want to finish up your questions about like Digital Circus, please like feel free.
I do have at least. I'll get to my last one here.
Okay.
So we know Gangle has the comedy and tragedy masks. So what if if they were to manifest as their own character, like the comedy is her own person and the tragedy is her own person, what kind of conversations do you think they would have?
I mean, regardless of comedy or tragedy, the thing about Gangle is, I mean, the mask doesn't change her that much. The tragedy mask, she's constantly in tears as she speaks. But the comedy mask doesn't make her happy and peppy. It just sort of stops the tears. So she's still pretty reserved. She's still pretty quiet. She's just not in tears.
Right.
So I feel like if they were two, like twins or something, they would be almost identical. They'd both be really into anime. They'd both be into art. The only difference is one has tears constantly going down her face and the other one doesn't. They would be, sort of inseparable and very, very alike.
I could see that. That'd be cute. And I feel like they would definitely get along better with Zubul and Pomni and not so much so Ragatha.
It seems like they had a strained relationship. I don't really know what's going on there. It sounds like maybe they used to get along and then, sort of, I think it has to do with Gangle's own lack of self-confidence as well. Because if you interact with somebody who you think is being fake, even if they are trying their best to be nice, and they do want to get along and they do like you, if you feel like someone is being fake and you also feel like you are not, that great, you're immediately going to, come to the conclusion that they're secretly, they secretly don't like you or they hate you or they're making fun of you or something like that. So I feel like it's not any problem of either of theirs. I don't think either of them did anything wrong to each other, but they just have kind of the wrong personality types to complement each other. Whereas Zubul just being very blunt and straight with Gangle means that Gangle doesn't second guess their, what they're getting at. Right. Zubul just says it outright.
Right.
Yeah, and I can definitely respect that. Hopefully, this sort of personality conflict is what we can see down the line, hopefully.
Yeah, I'm very interested to see if Gangle gets an opportunity to sort of resolve some of her issues with the other circus members, because she certainly does have an interesting dynamic and relationship with a lot of them.
Right.
But that remains to be seen.
I just can't wait to see her put Jax in his place again. That was very satisfying. For the past episodes, he's just been a giant jerk to her.
So, finally, okay, so I'll transition back into some of that. This happens often. I'll transition into some of my questions that are more VA related. So one thing that I did want to ask, let's see. Oh, okay. So the dub of Hells was notable for being dubbed by a crew who worked with the production company Team 4-Star. So I want to ask, what was your experience working on that and playing the character of Wolfie?
Well, that was a long time ago. That was one of the first things that we ever did over at Sound Cadence. And obviously collaborating with the TFS guys also made it a little bit of a different sort of production from your standard anime dub.
Right.
The way that it happened is Discotek, who has done a lot of great releases of older anime in the past, was just sort of starting to dabble with dubbing their own releases and adding dubs to things that didn't have them initially. And they reached out to TFS to do Hells because the tone of Hells seemed to work really well with like their sort of comedy.
Right.
And they were like, cool, we'll definitely do it, but we don't really dub things. Dragon Ball Z Abridged, as it was recorded more like Digital Circus in that it was a prelay thing. They would record into the void and then use the animation from the show to match rather than matching the animation to their line reads. So it wasn't like a traditional dub, which meant they didn't have traditional dubbing experience. So the reason why they brought us on, Sound Cadence, as a studio is because we had a little bit of experience. We had just done a show for Media Blasters called Rio Rainbow Gate, and there was a 12-episode anime dub, which actually had some of the TFS guys in it. So they knew that we had this anime experience.
Nice.
I didn't work on any of the behind the scenes of Hells, except for the fact that I was there in the studio. Like, I saw a lot of it happening, but it was mostly Amberly Connors, Howard Wang, and Scott Frericks from TFS. They all sort of collaborated on the casting and the writing and the directing. So my experience sort of started and ended with just watching that happen and then getting in the booth to be Wolfie. I know that the casting did lean towards people who had been in TFS productions or had at least been referenced in TFS stuff. So, for example, the lead was Amelie, who had provided the voice of the custom character that they used in their playthrough of Xenoverse, one of those Dragon Ball games.
Oh,
where you could pick your own voice. Yeah, so that's a very deep cut, but it was good justification for, okay, you know, Amelie can play this lead character and she's also a really good fit for it. I snuck in because I had just been in DBZA as the Shamotions in the Broly movie. Technically I was a TFS affiliated actor by that point. And so I was able to audition and got Wolfie, which I was very, very happy about. I love voicing animal type characters where I get to snarl and growl and bark and do all that kind of stuff. So after that point, you know, after the casting, it was just a normal dub. We were dubbing to the animation just like I had done at Funimation a million times before and at Sound Cadence for Rio Rainbow Gate itself, which is how I met Amber. And, you know, the process of rewriting and making it fit flap and all that stuff, just like a normal dub. The thing that made it TFS branded was the casting and some of the jokes that had been injected into it and sort of the style. But it was not an abridged series. You know, it was a real full-length uncut dub using standard dubbing procedures. So it was sort of a little column A, a little column B as far as, you know, being a dub versus being quote unquote an abridged product, you know?
Yeah. And no, I'm definitely very glad that not only, I think that's just a unique perspective, like being able to, like, you know, obviously get practice and get like work in through unofficial means, but being able to graduate to an official product. I think that's definitely, you know, it's definitely like a great opportunity, and I'm glad that everyone is, you know, very accomplished in their own right in order to be able to get to that point.
Yeah, I think it was the perfect combination of talent for that particular movie because it really added something special.
Right.
It reminds me.
And Arteice, continue.
I was like when you said, Adam, it kind of reminds me of how, like, you know, his name escapes me, but the English dub VA for Deku. I remember how he first started, like, on Team 4 Stars, like, it was in a bridge series for, like, I don't know the game.
That's Justin Briner.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, when I first met him, I think it was before My Hero, or he had just started My Hero. And, you know, he was there overseeing and helping with Rio Rainbow Gate, actually.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, oh man, you know, like, it's nice to meet you. And I was like, what do I know you from? And at the time he was like, I'm just starting this new series, but like, you probably don't know it yet. And we were trying to figure out what I maybe heard him in. And it ended up being the Hyam Daisy Persona 4 comic dub. He was like, I was in that. And I went, oh, I know that.
What a flashback.
Very, very funny way to know Justin Briner, who is now, you know, arguably one of the most prolific dub VAs of our sort of generation.
Oh, yes.
But back then I was like, yeah, the Hyam Daisy comic, I know that.
I think it's also like a good reminder to, like, especially beginner VAs to, like, it's okay to humble beginnings. It really does start with humble beginnings.
Yeah, I mean, you know, people have asked, like, again, about Gangle, where they're like, have you ever done a character like Gangle? And I'm like, yeah, the sort of proto Gangle is in a series called Starter Squad, which is a Pokemon 3D animated parody series made by Shippage on YouTube.
I love that parody.
Yeah, so
wow.
Nidoran female, whiskers.
Oh my god, I love whiskers.
That's me.
Oh my
and it's basically, it was Gangle before I could go that high pitched. So her voice is a little bit lower, but it's just because I was new and I couldn't really, I didn't know how to make my voice go higher.
wow.
But she's proto Gangle.
Oh my gosh, I love that. I love that series.
You really have been everywhere. Oh man.
And then when she became Nidorina, it was just my normal voice.
Yeah, damn. Now I'm gonna listen back to it and then I'm gonna hear it. I didn't realize that until now, but damn.
Be like, whoa. Yeah, everyone seems to mix me up with Jill Harris, who plays Caterpie. A lot of people are like, Gangle and Caterpie have the same voice. And I'm like, nope, it's Whiskers. And if you know that it's Whiskers, I feel like you can really hear it.
Oh yes.
Right.
I'm remembering Whiskers' voice and like some of her lines, like now I hear it now. I can't unhear it.
Everyone here really believes in each other. Like, it's very much Gangle, but not as high pitched.
Wow.
Oh gosh, Gangle but more depressed.
Yes. Oh, if that could even be possible. Poor Whiskers.
And you know, before I transition to another question, I wanted to say another thing that I saw. I think it was a video posted on your VTuber channel, but the amount of people who like knew you from like your VA work or your VTuber work, but didn't know that you voiced Gangle and just assumed they did like a really good impression. Oh my god.
Yeah. Again, people will come to my VTuber channel and they'll be like, you're Gangle's voice actor. You don't sound anything like her. And I'm just like, thank you. To me, that's a big compliment, but it did lead to this very hilarious period of time where I was getting a bunch of comments calling me a fake. So I decided to make the saying a lot of things as Gangle video, where I collected a bunch of real comments from that people had actually left me about how I wasn't really Gangle and read them all out as Gangle because I thought it was funny.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Some of those were definitely out of pocket comments, but I'm glad you're able to have fun with it.
Yeah. What is, the internet if not something to have fun with? If you go on the internet and just have a bad time, there's really no point.
Yeah. So another thing I was listening to, it was an interview you had with, and I apologize in advance for mispronouncing this name, Elise Bowman. Thank you. So I wanted to ask if you had, so we did touch on this like a little bit over the course of our interview, but do you have like any like feelings about the unique perspective starting as someone who was a fan of like nerdy media like anime or games to be able to help with the production of it, I guess?
It is a benefit and it is also a curse. Something
Right.
that I found early on is that I had an idea in my head of what dubs sounded like or should sound like. And if you are sort of doing that, you can become quite derivative. Where you come in and you're like, I'm doing the anime voice. And then everybody sort of sounds like the anime voice. And what you're creating is not unique to you. And therefore, why would anyone hire you, right? But on the other hand, it is useful to come into the anime industry understanding anime, where if I go into the booth, and I remember Clifford Chapin hired me for a show called The Ones Within. And he was like, your character is like a glasses girl and a yandere. What sort of voice comes to mind? And knowing that those archetypes have a particular voice in anime, I immediately knew what I wanted to do. And he was also like, I want you to kind of do an impression of Yoli from Digimon. And I was like, yeah, I got a Yoli impression. Absolutely. So knowing those things made that job quite easy for me because I was like, I know what a yandere sounds like. I know how glasses girls kind of get portrayed in anime. Whereas if I had no anime experience, those words would mean nothing to me. Saying that she has glasses doesn't mean anything really. And saying that she's a yandere, you'd have to explain what that is. But having anime experience helps you with those archetypes. You know, you come in, you're like the kudere, the dere. I know what these things sound like. I know what they tend to sound like. I know that characters with blue hair tend to have more of a cool sort of way of talking. Characters with pink hair tend to be the very bubbly, high-pitched, cutesy-wootsy ones. And then sometimes, you know, the show will intentionally twist that to sort of undermine or lampshade those standards. But knowing the standards does help. But it can also hold you back insofar as if you're coming in and doing the anime voice, there's nothing there. You're just mimicking actors that you've heard before. So what ended up being your biggest strength for a lot of us who are in, again, I kind of separate voice actors by generation. There's a generation before us, Chris Sabat, Monica Rial, you know, Jeff Nimoy, anybody who's in Digimon, Pokemon, Dragon Ball, all those guys.
Yeah.
And then there was our generation, which was, you know, me, Justin Briner, Amberly Connors, Christopher Guerrero, all of us who are sort of in our late 20s to early 30s now. We came in with both the hindrance of an expectation of what anime would sound like, but also the boon of you don't need to explain any of this to us. And once we developed enough, you know, I would say like maybe 2 or 3 years into my career, I figured out what anime voices I could do that were unique to me rather than imitations of anime voices I had heard in the past. There's a lot of voices that I go to now where I'm just like, this is my anime mom voice. You know, that, oh, honey, oh, isn't that wonderful? Did you have a nice day at school today? Yeah, that's my anime mom voice. I've used it a million times, but it's my anime mom, you know, rather than just what I think an anime mom should sound like regurgitated. Or my femme fatale voice, which is always this. Yeah. I have used that in several anime, but it's mine, you know?
Right.
And that is sort of the tightrope you have to walk of it's good to know anime, but it's bad to be kind of stuck in imitations of the past. You need to figure out what anime archetypes you are really good at, and then, you know, come into the market and go, hey, if you need someone who can play the femme fatale or the mom or, you know, this, that, or the other thing, I'm the person for that. You should call me for that.
Right. And yeah, no, I definitely agree. Like voice acting is an art in of itself. But I guess like compare this in terms of like, drawing. You know, there are many different quote unquote like anime styles, but like if you're trying to like replicate like a facsimile just based on like what you see on TV, for instance, you know, it's not going to be a 1-to-1. You know, there's no homage of anime style because like each artist that, you know, you're seeing, you know, you like their work, not only are they studying the fundamentals, they have their own background in studying, you know, like source material. It's like knowing how the basics works. And that what leads to their style, their unique voice. Well, literally in your case, obviously.
Yes, obviously. And also, you know, it's not only that, it's also the styles change over time.
Yeah.
Using your example of, you know, the quote unquote standard anime art style, what you think of as looking like anime nowadays is not the same as what you think of in the early 2000s. You know, the early 2000s was Chobits, Higurashi, Clannad, those big wide-eyed, you know, anime girls with the split part hair and like sort of the chalky, very like pastel-y colors. Whereas now anime is very vibrant and very striking. There's a lot more like, I don't want to call it harshness, but there's a lot more weight to most of today's modern art styles.
Yeah.
And it's the same with dubs, where there are dub voices that just we don't do anymore. And it's because there are certain characters that just don't pop anymore. You think of like the swirly glasses perverted best friend. You know, that was a very 90s and early 2000s archetype, but he's kind of gone away. We don't really see him anymore, and therefore the like super nerdy voice that goes with him has also sort of fallen out of vogue. And this is something I notice when people are making demo reels. You know, you're a new voice actor, you have to make a demo reel, which is like a little 60-second snippet of voices you can do. People who are anime fans tend to include I'm sort of the nerdy glasses guy. This is my perverted nerdy glasses guy voice. But that voice has sort of fallen out of vogue because that character type has fallen out of vogue in anime. So what anime sounds like, quote unquote, changes based on the character archetypes that are popular at the time, the art styles, how grounded and realistic the shows are. And that has all sort of changed with the times as well, just in Japan, even before we start thinking about a dub.
Right.
It's just different now.
Very interesting, honestly. And just a segue, because I do have like two little mini questions about voice acting. One question from my partner artist, Jay, and we can finally just like wind down. So for my questions, since we're still talking about voice acting, do you have like any tips on how someone should brand themselves online, like using screen names or real name or having a real photo if they were just trying to start out?
If you're just trying to start out, you don't necessarily have to put your real photo on things, but you do want to have recognizable branding if you're not going to use your face. So use the same icon everywhere. If it's like a little Sona of you, that's probably better than just like a generic character. Or, if you're lucky and you've already booked something, you can maybe put your first character as your icon. But generally, it's better for something that represents you, be it a little VTuber or your real face or a cartoon facsimile of you, just something, and it needs to be consistent across all your social media, your website, everything, so that when people find you on different platforms, they go, oh, yeah, okay, this is the same person. It's not necessary to put VA or VO in your online handles, but you can, especially when you're new. A lot of people do start that way. And then once you become a recognizable name, maybe you chop it off later. What name you go by is pretty important. I decided to go by my legal name, but some people regret doing that because then you are, people can find you, people can stalk you.
Yeah.
It's not great. So some people choose to use a middle name or a completely fake name. And I do think you should give that serious consideration before you start booking anything, because once you've booked one thing under one name, that's the name everyone's going to think of you as, which is why people thought that Vixen the reindeer was not Marissa Lenti, because I am known as Marissa Lenti. I'm not known as Vixen the reindeer. I've never been credited as Vixen in my voice acting work. So if you get married and your name changes, you're probably going to be going by your maiden name for the entirety of your voice acting career. So think really long and hard about if that's what you want.
Wow.
If you're currently married, do you want to go by your married name? Or, unfortunately, it can happen where you might get divorced and then you're stuck using your old married name as your voice acting name. Nobody really wants that. If you are trans or non-binary, think hard about what name you want to use, because people will be referring to you as that name forever. If you change your name in the middle of your voice acting career, it can be very difficult to get people to get on board with your new name, which means people might be accidentally dead naming you. Fans who are just excited to meet you might dead name you on accident.
Yeah.
So think long and hard about what name you want to go by, not even necessarily like a screen name, but like the name you want to use and put on real projects. And then the only other thing I recommend is don't put yourself down as an aspiring voice actor. Just write that you're a voice actor.
Yeah. No, I can definitely co-sign. I've talked to many people adjacent to the design part of the animation industry, and like one key point that a lot of people always say to like people who are just beginning or just aspiring, that word, like aspiring artist, aspiring character designer, just ditch it, like,
yeah, it gives the sense that you are too new to use.
Yeah.
But if I come across your stuff online, and this is something, if you want to get into voice acting, post stuff online, little comic dubs or work on indie titles. If you join Voice Acting Club, audition for little, student films or whatever. If I come across a student film or something and I hear you and I look you up, I want to find that you are confident enough in yourself as a voice actor that you just go, I am a voice actor. You can hire me now. Whereas if I come across your socials and it says aspiring voice actor, I go, oh, that's probably like the only thing they've done, that little film that I liked them in. Well, I liked them, but are they ready for prime time? Ooh, I'm kind of worried. Just say voice actor. You can hear me in these things. And if there's nothing that people can hear you in, just don't list anything yet. But just go, I am a voice actor. You can hire me now. Here's my email address.
Great. Like all this, like I specifically, like I'm just a PA, honestly, but like all this stuff, you know, you're the second person that I've had in the show that is more adjacent to anime and voice acting in particular. So this entire interview has been like really, really fascinating. You've been like a great guest, honestly. I guess the only final question from my partner Jay. Again, still related to voice acting. Do you have any particular nuances with your performance of comedy or sad mask Gangle?
Yeah, I've actually talked about this quite a bit on my blog. I feel like I should just read out what I wrote.
Yeah, go ahead.
Let me see if I can find it. I've become quite an avid Tumblr user lately, and
Nice.
that has led to me writing a bunch of answers to people. And one of them was about how I do the different Gangle voices. Let me see if I can find it really quick. I'll know that I found it because it is long as hell. I've been answering a lot of questions over there. Nope, not this one. There's another one that is long as hell, and it's all about not only comedy and tragedy, but also what I call the manic mask, which would be episode 4's mask. That's not a canon name, but that's what I call it. There it is. So I wrote, Gangle has 3 distinct voices so far, and each of them are placed slightly differently in my mouth/throat to create them. So tragedy is made by imitating what I think I sound like when I'm actually crying. I have been informed by a friend of mine that I don't actually sound like this when I cry, but it's what I think I sound like. It's very much in the nasal part of the face with a lot of vocal fry. Sniffling before delivering each line can help it sound more real. Voice cracks are encouraged and should not be shied away from. It's hard to give instruction on how to do it because it truly is just what I feel like is my real crying voice. I find that people with naturally higher voices actually have a bit of trouble making it sound the same, and it's easier if you have a naturally lower voice like I do and are pitching up to cry instead. That's where a lot of the natural vocal fry comes from. Then for comedy, very soft, higher in pitch than my natural voice, but not too high. Front of the mouth placement. You should feel your soft palate at the roof of your mouth engaging when you do this voice. Not very loud. There's not a lot of comedy Gangle in the show to work with as far as how to imitate her goes, but one cultural touchstone that I think gets pretty close is Fluttershy from My Little Pony. Specifically in the song What My Cutie Mark Is Telling Me, where she's talking about trying to make people laugh and she has Pinkie Pie's talent. That's comedy mask Gangle to me. She's not actually funny, but she's trying really hard. If you can do that, but slightly higher pitched, you're pretty close. And I do a decent bit of that voice also in saying a lot of things as Gangle from Digital Circus on my YouTube channel, so you can hear comedy Gangle there. Then there's manic Gangle, all head voice. Very high pitched, should feel like it's coming out of your forehead. Much louder than comedy, practically half shouting everything. This is the top of my register without manipulating my throat, so my instinct is to tell people to go as high as they can, but if you can go higher than me, then that's not quite right. You'll need to figure out where my top lands in your own register and try to aim for that. It might be in the middle for you. And then I also have this paragraph about placement. If you have trouble with placement and understanding what I mean by that, one trick I teach my voice acting students is called the humming trick. Everyone places their voice differently in their body to create their natural voice. People speak from the head, the nose, the front of the mouth, the back of the throat, or the chest. When you hum, you should feel one of these areas vibrate. As you proceed down from head to chest, the pitch should get lower as you allow more reverberation to occur in your vocal folds. This is why smaller people, who tend to speak from the head, nose, and mouth, have higher pitched voices than larger people who tend to speak from the throat or chest. training your voice to move placement will naturally change your voice even without much forcing, because it's changing the amount of air you're allowing to flow through your vocal folds, which is the thing that creates people's natural voices. And this is my biggest trick to creating differences in character voices. So for an example, I speak from the mouth. That is my natural vocal placement. So this is what I sound like from the mouth. If I hum and then move that reverberation down, I can make my voice lower. So this would be the back of the throat. This would be my chest voice. Whoa. It's basically as low as I could go. Then we can go up. Here's your nasal voice. This is, again, kind of like I was saying, the ones within. This is a glasses girl voice, very much, very nasal. And then, this is the top of the head. And this is basically where Manic Gangle ends up. Whoa. And then I mentioned if you manipulate your throat, you can actually do more. So I can go higher than that, but it requires manipulation of the throat. So, okay, everybody, here we are. We're all the way up here. That's head voice plus manipulation of the throat.
Impressive.
So it's a trick that is very, very useful. And I was taught that by Everett Oliver, one of my old voice acting coaches. It is the imitation of real life, because the thing that makes higher voices higher is less air going through your throat. So when most people try to go high, they struggle with it because they don't know how to physically make it happen. And that is the physicality. That is the difference. So Gangle has these 3 masks, and they are all placed just very slightly differently in my range by physically moving where the voice seems to come from.
Really useful. That's really awesome.
That was a very succinct explanation. Thank you very much, not just for this, but for this entire session.
Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. You've made us laugh, you've made us nerd out, you've made us awe. So yeah, you've been a wonderful guest. So as we finally wind down this episode, Arteice and Marissa, where can our listeners find you?
I'll go first.
Yeah.
You can find me, well, it used to be that you could find me on all the social medias, but I've sort of quit Twitter and I've sort of quit Facebook.
Yeah.
Usually you can find me either at Marissa Lenti on things like Blue Sky. I'm actually at marissalenti.com on Blue Sky because I have the custom domain.
Nice.
You can find me at Marissa Lenti on Instagram, although I don't really use Instagram much. Right now, the big social medias for me are my Twitch and my Tumblr, where I am Vixen_VTuber on Twitch and just Vixen VTuber, one word, on Tumblr. That's kind of where I am now. And then I have my YouTube. I have 2 channels, one under my name, Marissa Lenti, which has all of my old voice acting work on it. And then my newer one, which is Vixen the Reindeer, the VOD channel, where I post all of my old, or all of my new and old videos on demand, all my old streams. So that's a good place to find me now.
And you can find me, it's ArteiceTB on all platforms, Twitter, Instagram, Tumblr, Blue Sky, TikTok, if that still exists, I guess. Also on YouTube, ArteiceTB. Also have a second channel just talking about Pokemon, as well as made a TikTok for it. If it survived, I'll still try to post there, called PocoArt107.
And when it comes to me and my socials, you can find me on most platforms, either as my screen name, A2Adam, or with my real name, adamlature.com. That is LAUTURE.com. I also have a dedicated Blue Sky for the podcast, and I typically use both in order to announce updates with regards to video projects I'm working on, new guest announcements, stuff like that. I also post guest updates to my Instagram, but I am not sure how long I'll be on there. So I would definitely recommend subscribing to my website's newsletter just in case you would like to keep up to date as to new posts on my site and any other creative projects. And again, for both of you, this was a very great experience. It's been great to talk to you, Marissa, and thank you so much, not only for everything you've done, but just for spearheading the Digimon movie Blu-ray specifically. It's in my hand as I say this, and genuinely speaking, this is one of my favorite movies since like 2004. So to be able to have this in my hand, it means a lot. And to just speak to someone that has, worked on it, it means the world.
Well, I'm really glad. It was my dream project, and I did it not only as a professional but also as a fan. Insofar as I did it the way that I would have wanted it to be done if someone else had done it.
Right.
As a fan, the things that I wanted, the things that I like about Digimon, the things that are important to me, I made sure were done in that dub, and I really can't thank Discotek and Mark and Brady and everyone who worked on it enough for letting me have so much power over it. It really was just the dream project. Everything after this is all gravy, essentially. And I kind of view that dub specifically, or those 3 dubs specifically, not as just a job, but more of as a community service. I feel like I really made that for the Digimon fandom.
Yeah.
Whereas, some stuff I work on, I go, I'm going to do my best, but I don't really know what the community is looking for, and I hope that they like what I make. But this was one where I said, I am the community, and I know what I would want to see, so
Yeah.
I will make that.
And of course, our father who are in Discotek, thank you very much. But
Thank you guys.
Thank you, Marissa.
Oh
It
my
was such a pleasure meeting you and getting to talk with you, and again, nerding out. And I can't believe how much, I feel so much more informed about the things I grew up on. And I still can't believe your whiskers. Holy shit.
It's always great to be able to talk to people who have worked on in any degree. That's a big purpose of this show, to spread highlight on people regardless of their roles, because there are a lot of less glamorous roles that are still important in entertainment and across various projects that people don't hear from, and I'm definitely going to focus more on that for the rest of the year. But again, I will finally sign off. We're just having a lot of fun here tonight.
Yes.
But yes, let me finally sign off. So, I have been Adam.
I've been Arteice.
And I'm Marissa.
And we will all catch you next time. Remember to stay safe, take care, wear a mask, and remember, love and peace always. Take care, everyone.
Bye.